Here on day 55 of our journey through the Bible, I don't want you to miss the sheer terror and horror and tragedy of the way the first 5 books of the Bible end, the way the Pentateuch comes to a conclusion. Because of unbelief, an entire generation of Israelites just end up wandering without purpose, without meaning, just walking through life. It must have been so frustrating, and yet that's always the way it is when we live our life apart from God. Now just think about the environment these people are living in. It is a dry, hot, arid desert. They have no permanent housing. You really can't live anything like what most people would call a normal life. The only destiny they could look forward to was a dusty grave. Their place in history is simply going to serve as a warning to others of how futile it is to live in unbelief. You know, the most tragic thing of all of this is that they have a full and complete knowledge of Yahweh's love and care. That's why this is so tragic. If ever a group of people were exposed to the presence of God, they were. There is no one before them or since them, for that matter, that lived in an environment in which everything so totally, completely depended on Yahweh to provide. There were no alternate provisions. They would die shortly without God providing them everything they needed. Why did God put them through those 40 years in the wilderness? Why didn't He just take them straight out of Egypt into the Promised Land? Well, remember that the land of Egypt is a picture of the carnal, lustful, old lifestyle. To leave the habits of food and lifestyle that they had grown up in, to give that up was going to take some time. If God had just immediately moved them right into the Promised Land, their love for leeks and garlics and the idolatry of Egypt, well, it would have just grown. They had to learn that their sufficiency, all their supply, would come from God and God alone. There's a Chinese proverb that says, "Never ask a goldfish what water is like." A goldfish can't really evaluate his environment until 1 minute after he's flipped out onto dry land and he's gasping for air. Many times, God has to remove us from the environment of our comfort, our wealth, our security, our possessions, so we can see ourselves as He sees us. Somehow in the desert, some things can become plain to us that we never knew before. If they had gotten out of the land of Egypt, but right to that land flowing with milk and honey, their self-centeredness, their idolatrous hearts, it would have never been broken. In the wilderness, though, their true value systems got exposed for what they were. Someone has said when you squeeze a grape, you find out what's inside of it. Well, that wilderness had a way of revealing what was really inside of them. But it also is a place where we can be molded by God. When you're living in a desert, when you're going through the wilderness, there's only one source of supply, and that's the Lord. Too often we keep trying to trust in our environment and everything else. We need to learn to trust Him. And so my point would be today, maybe you're facing a day in a wilderness. Maybe you're in a place where there's lots of pressure, lots of hardship, and it's really tough. I don't mean to minimize it or to even pretend I understand exactly what you're facing, but I do encourage you to look to the Lord as the only resource of this time. He is the great provider, and He will show you something about His love and tenderness and kindness during these difficult places like no other place if you'll let Him do that. He really doesn't make mistakes. He is in control of where you're at. So let this be a learning experience and a growing experience and a way that a time that you'll look back and be able to bless His name for what He's done. Let me read today from Psalm 106. I begin with verse 10. So He saved them from the hand of the foe and redeemed them from the power of the enemy. And the waters covered their adversaries, not one of them was left. Then they believed His words, they sang His praise, but they soon forgot His works. They did not wait for His counsel, but they had a wanton craving in the wilderness and put God to the test in the desert. He gave them what they asked, but sent a wasting disease among them. Verse 19. They made a calf in Horeb and worshipped a metal image. They exchanged the glory of God for the image of an ox that eats grass. They forgot God, their Savior, who had done great things in Egypt, wondrous works in the land of Ham, and awesome deeds by the Red Sea. Therefore He said He would destroy them. Had not Moses, His chosen one, stood in the breach before Him to turn away His wrath from destroying them? Then they despised the pleasant land, having no faith in His promise. They murmured in their tents and did not obey the voice of the Lord. Therefore he raised his hand and swore to him that he would make them fall in the wilderness, and would make their offspring fall among the nations, scattering them among the lands.